this episode, I'm back with initiated shaman John Paul Eagleheart Fischbach. Now, he's also a tree whisperer, so in this conversation, you're going to learn how to connect and receive the healing and wisdom that they offer. John Paul, I'm delighted to be back with you because our last episode was so fascinating. As a site whisperer, you took us around various sites that you visited around the world and shared their wisdom. And in this episode, you're also a tree whisperer. So you're introducing us to a number of very, very special trees. One, I believe, is right behind you.
Correct. That's Tim. So Tim is a golden elm tree here, and it's just in the middle of a park in the middle of Melbourne. So he wanted me to show you what he looks like in the height of summer. So we're not in the height of summer, but if we were, he would look like this.
Magnificent, absolutely magnificent.
So that's how he looked when I first met him. So I thought maybe we'd start by explaining that meeting. Would that be all right?
Oh gosh, yes. Why Tim and why not a different tree?
So I was walking through this park and it was a beautiful summer day. And so I had my bare feet and I was just walking and it was all lovely. And I'll try to speak louder when the wind picks up a little bit and see how we go, yeah? So I'm walking across the path and I hear a voice say, "Oi!" And in Australia, "Oi" is a particularly Australian greeting. That, you know, if it's a friend or somebody that you know, they say, "Oi!" And that's just how it is. So I hear this voice and I'm thinking, what the? And I look around and there's nobody. There is no one anywhere I can see in the park. So after a couple of times, he repeats this 3 times and I look and Tim, the tree, is just in full shining, like he's just gleaming and all of his sparkling and energy emanating from him. So I look at the tree and I said, "Is that you?" And he said, "Well, yes, you can see me, I can see you." So I went closer and we connected and I had a nice hug with Tim the tree and asked him if he would be my teacher. And he said, "Sure." And then I said, "Well, what should I call you?" And he said, "Tim." And I said, "Tim, really?" Tim. And he said, "I've always liked that name. Let's go with that." So that was about 4 years ago. And so Tim, sometimes he calls me, sometimes I come down and say hello. And he was my teacher for about the first 2.5 years. And then probably the last 1.5 years, we've just become incredible friends. And there was a terrible storm that happened one time, and a tree fell over from the storm and took out a bunch of his limbs. So he called me and said, "Can you come and look? Because you can see with sight. I can't tell that." So he said, "I feel okay, but I would love you to look and see if you think the damage is too severe." So sometimes I help him and sometimes he helps me. So that's Tim.
And over the 2 years when he was your teacher, what sort of things is he teaching you, John Paul?
Well, he taught me to photosynthesize, was one of the most profound things, like to just use sunlight to feed yourself and how to transfer that sunlight into energy and nutrients for yourself. So that was an incredible process where he cloned me. So he cloned all of the cells of me into his leaves. And he said that while the process is happening of the cloning, he said, you cannot have any negative emotions for the 2 days that this is going to take. Because he said, when I put your cells back in with the ability to photosynthesize, they have to match. And if you've had anger or if you've had anything that was disturbing, then the cells won't match and the cloning won't work. So for 2 days, I had to be on my absolute guard to just be, happy and buoyant and energized.
And what did it feel like when he put those photosynthesized cells back in you?
When you have goosebumps?
Yes.
Well, it was like goosebumps times 1,000. I really thought my hair was going to come out of my skull. I thought all of the the parts of my skin were just incredibly electric. I thought I was like, if you really have a really intense sunburn or rash, and it just went through me like a big wave. And I have a friend who had chemotherapy, and I think that's kind of what she described, was when it's coursing through your veins, it's this incredible like burning sensation. And that's the way it was. And then from then on, so however long ago that was, I pretty much eat maybe, well, I always have like 1 meal a day, maybe 2 meals a day, but that's really it. If I can get outside in the sunlight, I'm fine.
So does this open the door to the healing power of nature and the healing power of trees? Do all trees have the ability to do this for humans, or is this a skill or a talent or a gift that Tim particularly has?
So Tim's with us, so he'll answer that question if that's okay. So he said, most any tree can do this. And he said, but it's the ability of a tree to be able to speak human that makes it so that the human can stay long enough to participate in this. He said it can't happen instantly. Some of the healing happens instantly. He wants to know if I should explain, if he and I should explain what happens when you hug a tree.
Yes, definitely. That was one of the questions that somebody had.
Okay, so when, all right, so he's saying, explain how I see you. So when Tim perceives us as a human being, what he perceives is a frequency, it's like a braid of frequencies. It's vertical, and it has a particular signature. So I said, that's how I know it's you, John Paul, from other humans in the park, or that's how I know it's a duck, or how I know it's a particular bird, because it's a signature that I can feel that tells me your particular energy signature. Then he said, around that signature are 2 other spheres that swirl. So I showed him what a gyroscope was, and he said, yeah, kind of like that, but not exactly, but it's the closest I could get. So there's 2 outer rings that spin around. One holds our emotions, and the other holds our thoughts. And so he said, when you have difficult emotions, that stops spinning and it can get stuck. And the emotion gets stuck, and it now starts to read as your signature frequency. So it's you, the signature frequency, plus this particular emotion. And he said, that's not true. That's not who you are. So when you hug a tree, the tree can pull that outer ring of frequency up into its leaves and burn it away. They said, we can actually get rid of your emotions. We draw it through our trunk up into our leaves, and the sunlight burns that emotion away. So we can help release that. And if we do it the good job, and if you're willing to let go, then you return back to your signature frequency, and that emotional ring just starts spinning freely like it normally does. That's the best he's ever explained this.
Oh, that's a wonderful explanation. Can I ask him if intention is important there? So do they do it when anybody hugs a tree, or does the intention of the person hugging the tree have to be there, that they're there for healing? Or is this part of their role in terms of, you know, anyone who's near a tree, they're going to send that energy, that healing?
Well, he said, intention isn't important. Intention's important if you really have awareness that you want healing. But anybody that hugs the tree, the minute you make physical contact with the tree, they just start to do that, because he said, we want to know who you are. And this outer ring with this emotional stuff is blocking that knowledge. So we want to clear it because we want to see who you are. So he said, we do it not with any intention of healing per se. We do it because this is a thing that's clouding you, and we can't see who you are, feel who you are clearly. Didn't know that?
I also saw the importance of, you said it was really important to have clear thoughts. So they must notice as people walk by, you know, that there's so much rubbish in there. There's so much clutter in there. So I would imagine that hinders a lot of the communication channels. So when they went to you, oi, oi, it was because they could see you were a clearer channel. Is that correct?
Yes, he said, my particular frequency shows that I can speak to, you know, multidimensional beings, or I can communicate with multidimensional beings. So he said, that's rare in the park, but he says it does happen that he encounters people, but he practiced. So Tim's 80 years old. And he said it took him a long time to learn to speak human. And what he means by that is that normally when trees communicate with each other, they send a bundle of energy that's multi-layered frequency. So it communicates everything, just all kinds of different information layered in. And he said, but humans can't perceive that. So he said, if I try to communicate with you the way I normally do, you just, nothing. So he took over years and years and years of practice to strip the layers of communication. So when he sent the message to me, it only had one layer, a verbal message and a feeling of kinship or greeting. He said, that's it. That's all the message had in it, to see if you could get that.
And you did. So how do they, is it above ground or below ground that he communicates with the other trees and surroundings?
Below ground. He said other species, not him, but there's pine trees around. And he said the pine trees communicate through the air very well. He said his species, the elms, don't do through the air very well. They can. They mostly receive through the air, but they don't send very well through the air. They send very well through the underground network and the mycelium network.
Okay, and when you said there was that storm and some of his branches were compromised and he felt okay with it. So that's a storm. What happens when its man comes in and cuts branches? Do they like to be trimmed? Because I know Tim really is particular about how he looks.
No, he's not keen on it. He said, look, I can take care of myself. So he understands that because he lives in a park, that humans feel that they have to do things. So he's not very keen on it. But he said, when a tree gets cut down, he said, usually in the park, there's good notice for it. So he said, we transfer all our knowledge to the rest of the elm trees. So our knowledge and our experience and our stories are never lost. They're transferred to the younger trees. So he said that always happens well in the park. He said, in this case with the storm, he said there wasn't much time. So the tree that fell didn't get much time to transfer knowledge and information.
Interesting that it's always passed on, a little bit like, in the olden days with the grandparents passing the knowledge and wisdom down through stories, wasn't always written down. So what else has Tim shared with you? I mean, that photosynthesis and reigniting your cells and allowing you to be fed and on sunlight and the air as they are is absolutely incredible and sits very well with me, John Paul, because I've told you before about being a breatharian, and really it's not about not eating, it's about being fed in different ways through nature. Yeah.
No, it's been an incredible journey. So along with the photosynthesis, he's taught me to absorb water better. That when you drink water, you have to open. So he said, you're aware of your chakras, you're aware of the energy in your body. When you drink, you have to open all your cells. He said, don't just drink because of thirst. Be intentional. When you take that water and it starts going in, he said, just open your cells and keep them open while you drink. He said, and then you're going to absorb all the goodness of the water and you won't have thirst.
Okay, that's well. I'm thinking that as I'm drinking this right now. Now,
yeah.
I know Tim's with us and Tim's talking to us. He's got an audience. What is it that he, out into the world, into different parts of the world? What is it that he wants to share in the world that may sometimes be frustrating for him in terms of connecting with more humans?
Well, let me ask him. He doesn't understand why we feel ourselves so different than nature and so distant from nature. He said that's very confusing. And he said, I wish that more people would understand that we humans are a part of nature just like he is. And he said, if that simple change would happen, communication would open.
Well, I think it's understanding that there's consciousness in everything. Everything is energy, and energy is consciousness, and consciousness is energy, and understanding the different forms.
Yeah. Yep. Right. So he said that consciousness to him is frequency. So he said what he thinks you and I mean when we say consciousness is that everything has a particular frequency, and that frequency changes with experience and life and living. If that frequency never changes, then there's no consciousness. So he said, tell them about a car. So he asked me about cars, because there's lots of cars, as you can see. And he thought cars were like shells, like a snail, that we created them around ourselves for security and safety. So he didn't understand why he said, how is it that we're able to change our shells? And he said, we don't have shells. And so he pointed and he said, like those over there. And I said, oh, so we had to explain that those are cars. And he said, well, I didn't understand that, because he said, there's no consciousness to those things. So if I feel into them, I don't get anything.
Oh, very, very interesting. It reminds me when we were speaking the other week and you were at the place with the rock art and you said, there's nothing. You didn't pick up anything until you went around the corner. And so his own growth comes from developing his own wisdom as we do as we grow, but also from all the other trees around. And I would imagine, is it a reciprocal arrangement that, he's enabled himself to be able to communicate with humans? So is he also teaching that to other trees? Because when people have asked me, well, Carol asked him, how do you connect with trees? So is it that some are not going to connect because they can't speak the language? We can't speak the language, they can't speak the language, so there isn't a connect. So is there a way that we know which trees can speak?
Yeah, so he teaches, and I bring lots of people to meet him. And so what he does as a test is he said, I'm going to send you one of these energy packets. And you get an energy, and it comes mostly, I ask people to take off their shoes, be barefoot on the land, and see if they can feel a warm, friendly feeling that comes to them. So if you find a tree and you say, I'd love to establish communication with you, stand there, relax, feel into the base of the soles of your feet, and the tree will send you this impulse, kind of a greeting, a little kind of warm, welcome feeling. And once you get that, then you have to respond back. And you just respond back by saying, I got that, thank you. And, love back to you. And that starts the communication. So they have to know that you can receive the information, you can send the information. He said it's very frustrating that someone will be in distress and they'll reach out because that emotion thing that they perceive, right? So he says, I reach out and I send this compassion to them. And all I get is a general kind of look. They look back at me and I get a kind of oh. It's like, no, we can talk. We can talk to me. So that's what he reckons is the best way to start opening the communication. And ask yes or no questions are easiest to start with. And you'll get a feeling again. You'll get, most people describe it as it's a warmth if it's yes, and it's kind of a cold, empty feeling if the answer is no. So he said, start with yes or no questions, and we can give you those simple impulses. To have a dialogue like Tim and I have, he said, the tree has to be able to strip out the layers of its communication because we just can't, it's too much information. He's taught me over the years, I can now speak tree, but it took a lot of practice for me to be able to get that whole bundle of information and go through the different layers. And he would quiz me and he would say, okay, how many layers? And I'd count them and he'd say, yes, no, you're missing some. Let's try it again. And then he'd say, okay, what was the information in the layers? And so it was like being in school, and those were my tests.
So when you say the layers, is that like when you cut a log and you see all the different rings and layers?
No. So he said no. It's that the bundle of energy that he communicates tells you the location, the time of day, the quality of the air, the amount of moisture in the soil, and in the health of the tree and the whole park. Then it'll have layers of communication. It's as he connects to me, there's a diagnostic in there that tells me how my health is. He's not pleased that I'm not remembering all of these layers. Well, send me a bundle. Right. Who he is, where he is, what's happening in his immediate surroundings, what's happening as far distant as you want to go into that layer and perceive. His connection to me, how long that has been in our kind of time, like number of seconds that communication is going, whether our communication is strong, weak, the connection, whatever that is between us, whether that's good, strong, weak. What else is in that one? And then he's got questions. So he doesn't know where you are, because when you're inside technology, he doesn't actually know where you are. So he wants to know where you are.
Well, where I am in the world.
Mm.
Yes. Well, you know, I'm in Dubai and in the Middle East.
Oh, how can she help that? Is there a tree anywhere near you that you can see?
Not from this yes, I can see one over the road, and I do have one tree in the corner of my garden. I have two trees. I also have a drumstick tree, which is very skinny, and some of the other nationalities love the sort of, I wouldn't call it fruit, but what hangs from its trees. It's meant to be very precious in terms of healing.
Okay, so if you can take yourself spiritually, mentally to that tree, he'll try to connect.
I'm going to the one in my garden in the corner,
Okay.
that my cats go up and down to get on the wall.
He's saying it's very hard, but he thinks if he's got you, that it's not a very old tree, meaning it's not over 100 or anything.
No, none of them here would be.
And he doesn't think it's a natural tree, that it didn't grow there on its own, someone planted it?
No, yes, all of them would be here.
Okay, then I think he's got the right one. Oh, okay. So I think we're okay. So he's saying, I don't know that tree at all. That tree is very strange, different, as in unique and different to him. So he said that whole country is very different. He said, I don't know that there's any of me around. Are there elm trees? Have the colonizers, the British, planted elm trees in the gardens and things? Are there English gardens?
People do have gardens, but obviously there's mainly palm trees and different types of trees, and everything planted and modern, because it's, in parts of the UAE, it's very rocky, which actually brings me round to another question that he may be able to help with, which is a documentary that I watched that said there are no trees on planet Earth, in that in the old times, what we see as like Table Mountain, it looks like a mountain, but it's flat topped. And they said, actually, there's a theory that these were giant trees that were cut down, hence the flat top on so many supposed mountains. And then you also have certain places where you find this petrified wood that's supposedly been wood in over thousands and thousands of years that's turned to silica minerals, and then over thousands of years turned into crystal. Would that be true? Were there giant trees that no longer exist on this planet because they were all cut down?
Okay, he's saying that's a bit complicated in that so he's saying that there were several resets to the planet where the scale of things on the planet were altered. So he said, me and all of the trees that we know now happened when the last reset of scale happened. He said, I believe what you're talking about are what we have in our stories as our most ancient ancestors.
Yes, yes. Oh, wow, that's
He
nice.
said, he said, those are stories to me like your, well, I said fairy tales. He said, no, like the ancient myths that you have that you know are true, but are so long ago that you can barely imagine them. Makes sense? So we have those same stories.
So is his purpose now to connect with more humans or to gather more wisdom from the other trees? And if it's to connect with more humans, is that to do with the healing of our energy fields as well as the earth, because of we're all interconnected?
He said the current need is to connect with more humans and have dialogue happen. He said the shift that is happening to this planet requires participation from the humans and nature. And if we can't open that dialogue clearly, then we're all going to be in trouble. He said, we have to work together. So the more people and tree communication, the more human and tree communication that happens, the better, and we better get on with it, because we need to start a dialogue for healing if humans are to remain. Yikes.
That's a serious warning, and another big yes to being more in nature, as you and I have said and stressed, to take off your shoes, feel the grass, the sand, and there's something very magnificent about being next to a really beautiful tree. And I really like the way he explained how we can connect and really being in touch and getting those feelings and getting the yes, no, and then starting to tap into the extraordinary wisdom and knowledge that they have. So does his knowledge and wisdom network spread beyond the Australian continent?
He said yes and no. He said energetically, and because part of him is a spiritual being like we are, he said I can tap in. So it's too long a story, Tim. We did a ceremony for the December solstice, where he asked me to bring lots of resins and incenses, and through that he was able to connect with trees all over the planet. But that was only him as a spiritual being. He said in his physical form, it's very difficult to go very far at all. He could reach me at my home, which is about 2 kilometers from here. But he said going very far afield it's not possible.
So does he enjoy?
It is possible, it's just hard.
Does he enjoy his physical form, going through the seasons?
He said, it is what it is. I am who I am. I'm honored to be in this form at this time. He said, I can't answer, do I enjoy it? Because I don't have anything to compare it with. This is who I am and this is what I do.
Is there something that's unique to each species of tree? other than that
Yes.
they look different? Do they hold different wisdom, different knowledge?
Yes. Yes, he said each tree has a different purpose, and he said we fulfill our purpose. So every species chose to be on this planet to serve, and that serving has a particular purpose. He said to me, he said, "You like the term medicine that every tree has." So his particular medicine or his particular wisdom to share is what he calls shining. And he said, as a golden elm, I provide a canopy, and I provide this beautiful canopy in this safe place. And he said, I just radiate beauty. And he said, my gift to humans is when we connect, he said, I teach you to just be 100% you and shine like I do and be radiant, and to put that incredible, unique self out into the world in bands of energy and waves of energy. And that makes you strong, and it makes the world stronger.
That's more profound than many people will realize, because we often walk by people and we never notice their energy, their power. All organisms read energy, and as human beings, we've got particularly lazy with that, just glued to our devices. And hence, these gems, these wisdom, that, to be as beautiful and as pure and clean as you possibly can, and remember how much that impacts other people in a covert way, that other people may not see it, and a great lesson to pay more attention to everything that's around you when you wake up in the morning, to literally look at the trees and feel their energy, their beauty, and bathe in that. Really, it is bathing in nature, isn't it?
Oh, so he wants to share that the tree that it's in your garden, he said that tree is amazing, that it can find the nutrients anywhere. It's such an incredible survivor. So that tree can seek out the water and the nutrients in a place that it's hard to find. But he said the medicine of that tree that you're talking about, for example, is if you understand that medicine and you work with that tree, then you too can find all the nourishment that you need in any situation.
Ooh, thank you, Tim. That's lovely. I shall pay attention to the trees in my garden much more, the drumstick tree and the other one in the corner. Now, you've also visited a number of other places where there's been some very unique trees. Would you like to share some of those with us?
Sure.
And I'm sure Tim will be on this journey with us.
Yes. So this is a particularly important one. How do I do? There we go. So this is called a directions tree. And it's a particular kind of eucalypt. And it was out in an Aboriginal community. And the reason it's called a directions tree is when the child is born, they take the placenta from the child's birth and they mix it with a seedling, and they plant the seedling together so that the child will always have this tree to come back to when it needs guidance. So this tree will provide direction for that child for the rest of its life. So when we went to visit this directions tree, which was used for many children, it doesn't have to just be only one child per tree. We talked with this tree, and the tree said, if you can see my twisted bark and all the patterns and the waves of the bark,
Yes.
he said, I want you to understand that there's no single path. He said, a lot of times people come when they're confused about their direction in life, and they think that there's a straight path or there's an easy path. And he said, there isn't. It's just a beautiful winding journey. And if you can accept the fact that every path has a wind to it, you're going to have a much better time. So just enjoy the journey, enjoy the turns, enjoy the curves. And he said, that's what I want to teach everyone, is to just appreciate the journey that you're on, that it will have those twists and those turns. And that's the way it's supposed to be.
Yes, it's much more interesting, isn't it, rather than a straight line, to have all those and creating different patterns. We'll go here, we'll go there. Absolutely. I always use that mantra. It's your imperfections that make you far more interesting.
Yeah, yeah. Yep. So the indigenous people in Australia always had a really clear and strong connection to trees. They always knew that trees were places that you gave birth at. So there are special eucalypts that have beautiful hollows in them. Those are birthing trees. And women went there because the tree, again, has this ability to take the pain and move it away. And also has that place of nurturing. So these beautiful hollow trees were often birthing places, and they're highly revered. So these direction trees and the birthing trees are two indigenous trees that are just so special to talk to. And they've always had an incredibly close relationship. This is another kind of a eucalypt.
Oh my goodness, look at the twists and turns on that.
Yep. So this is a red gum. And this tree is in a park. And when we went to this park, it was like going to an old folks home. And there were all these beautiful, because these trees would be 300, 400 years old. And they were just so happy that someone was there to visit them and talk to them. So this long branch that you can see there,
Yes.
that tree grew with the community. So trees don't normally do this shape, but because the community needed them, and children needed a place to play and run and climb, and they needed a place to dry skins. So when they would skin a kangaroo, they would put the skin over that limb to scrape the hide. So the tree participated with that community and said, well, I'll stay low so that it's a place for everyone to do everything they need to do. And so the tree worked with the people to come into that shape.
The tree becomes part of the community and an extended member of the family.
Yes. Yep.
Beautiful.
There were lots of them like that, and each tree would have been for a particular, it was a particular family's tree, but it provided all the climbing things that kids wanted. It provided all the storage places that you needed, provided everything for you. I mean, that's incredible how they lived so with the trees. And it's most of their words that I have learned that I've been taught, that word for tree is just the same as a word for a person. So I know that in Native American tradition, we call them the stone people or the tree people or the grass people. But the language in indigenous languages that I've learned really refer to them as another person. It isn't that it's a tree person, it's just a different person.
And for you, you will have seen the different personalities of the trees that you've connected with. Like Tim is quite a character and shares so much, and you have a special bond with him. And seeing these different trees with different purposes, like the eucalyptus birthing tree, and then this tree, part of the family. Yes, wonderful.
Yep. One of the direction trees, I was out on a hike with a photographer friend who was taking pictures of some really incredible trees. And this birthing tree reached out and wanted to ask a question. And I said, yes. And they said, have you seen the twins? And I said, I'm sorry, I don't understand. And the tree explained that they were a birthing tree for a pair of twins back, I don't know, maybe 100 years ago, 150 years ago. And they said that the twins have never come back. So they said, this is my purpose, is to be the directions tree for these twins, but I've never seen them again. So we had to explain that so much has happened with colonization, and that the native people, the indigenous people that would have been there 100 years ago are long gone, and the chances of the twins ever coming back. And the tree was so sad because this tree said that was my purpose, was to be the guide and the direction for those twins. So to hear that they're not coming back is very sad.
Wow, and I hope some parents are listening to this and thinking about how they can connect their children with a tree like that who can guide them. And like you know, Tim's helped you, you've helped Tim, you know, you have that connection and, you know, direction as well. Beautiful. Thank you for sharing that.
Yep. Yep. Another interesting eucalypt is this one.
Gosh, really?
So that's a eucalypt that's just growing out of a rock. And can you see the little stub that connects down to the rock, kind of like an elbow?
Yes.
So when I encountered this tree, we were chatting and I said, you know, I always say, is there a message I can deliver for you? And they said, yes, just grow wherever you're planted. Don't worry about it. Don't keep looking for better soil. You're just going to make do. And he said, if you need to make a rest and you need to grow in this direction, just grow in that direction. Go where it's easy. Grow where it's easy. And if you have to put down a little elbow to prop yourself up, put down a little elbow. He said so many people that he's experienced that walk by him are saying what if and it should be and I should and I, you know, it's too hard. He said, oh, for God's sake, get over yourself.
It must be so frustrating. As I was saying, you know, Tim must see so many people walking by and get all this busy thoughts. And like you say, you know, just get over yourself. Here you are, make the best of it.
Yep. So this was definitely the message of just make the best of it. And he said, no, look, I've grown up, you know, I'm over 100 years old and I've grown up out of a rock. I figured out how to go get the nutrients I need and find soil. I just did it. I just figured it out. So he said, you know, people, come on, just do what you need to do.
Yeah, so that's
you know, no excuses.
And always finding a way, wherever you are in life, finding a way instead of like, oh, I should be here, I should be there, where should I live? Make the most of where you are. Yeah, yeah. Beautiful. Yeah. And there was another image you showed me of a tree and a rock almost wrapped around each other.
Oh, yes.
Almost hugging each other. Like in a relationship.
Yep. So the Yuin people who are on the southeast coast of New South Wales are an incredible group of people. And their teaching is that the two gifts that the Creator gave to man were the tree and the stone. And they said that's all you need is the tree and the stone. It will give you everything you need to have a life. Just it's the tree and the stone. As long as you take care of the tree and the stone, you're going to be fine. So they explain this symbiosis of the tree and the stone. And they said that as the stone breaks down and gives the tree all the nutrients the tree needs, the tree holds the stone people and the soil together. So they said they're one of the best symbiosis relationships of two species that there ever were. So that's their fundamental teaching. And they start every initiation ceremony for men with explaining that the gifts to humans were the stone and the tree, and those are it. That's your gifts. Figure it out.
Okay, so surrounding trees with stones would be a good thing.
Yeah. Yep. Very friendly. They like it. It's all good.
Okay. All right. So is there a last message from Tim to leave us with today in terms of, you know, connecting with trees, going back to what you said about take off your shoes, feel your feet in the ground, and see if you get a feeling from the tree. My question would be, can it be any tree, or as Tim said, it took him a long time to connect with humans. So how do we, you know, how do we find the tree that wants to connect with us and vice versa? Or do we just go from tree to tree to tree?
So he's saying, he wants us, you and I, Carol, you and I, to help people understand that trees are like people. He said, we are very similar in that we have consciousness and we change. Lots of things have consciousness, but don't change as much as a tree does or as a person does. So he said, please understand that we're very similar. So the next time anybody walks through a park or near a tree, please say hello. Like you would acknowledge, if you passed another person in the park, you would at least acknowledge them and send, he's saying you send a message unit, whether it's verbal or not, you send a message unit between you that acknowledges that you are a conscious being passing a conscious being. He said, please do that with us. And then if you want to make a contact, he said, do the taking off your shoes and try. He said, other trees, he said, I'm sure other trees have learned to speak human as well. The level of communication could be different, but don't hesitate to hug any tree. Because he said, please remember that what we'll do to clear your emotion is not because we know that you're in need of healing. We do that because we want to meet you as purely as you're meeting us. And that there's something in the way, there's some emotion or thought that's in the way, and we'll just take it out. So I said, that's just a byproduct of any tree will do that. Palm trees, any tree can do that and will do that because they want to meet you like you want to meet us.
Thank you, Tim. That opens the door to meeting lots and lots more friends in the world, doesn't it? Wherever you go, you know, you've always got the opportunity to meet trees and to make friends with trees and expand your circle of friendship and connection.
Yeah. Yep, absolutely.
Thank you, John Paul. This has been an extraordinary conversation, and I'm sure it's changed your world in terms of how you view trees, nature, everywhere you go. And I can now see the reason that you want to be outside so much of the time.
Oh, yeah. One of my favorite things is as Tim and I, our friendship grew, more of the trees that he would talk to about me, they began to sort of trust a little bit better. And he said, a lot of trees won't talk to you because they just don't trust humans. And we're in a public park. I think when I'm out in the forest or in the wild, trees are happy to chat. But in a park, they're a little more reserved. And so some of his elders, I don't know if you can see them up the path. Yes.
Amazing park.
So some of those older ones, after a while, I would go by them and they would say to me, one of them said, well, lots of us can talk, you know. We're just not all gregarious.
Go, Tim. Keep being gregarious.
Yeah, exactly. Yep.
What a lovely note to end on today. You know, go forth, be gregarious, and there's different personalities, and which then answers the question that you're going to feel a connection with certain trees and not with others, as they would. Yeah. Totally.
Yep. And when you find the one, you know, so Tim has a sister. His sister because they were planted at the same time and they're both golden elms. They're not biological sisters and brother, but she doesn't talk. She's all feeling. So for those of you listening that are not those kind of verbal communicators, she communicates absolutely in feeling. And it's just incredible. So people that I take to meet Sarah, the name that Tim told me to use, because she doesn't really, very rarely does she ever use language, and it's always a bit strange, but it's just these incredible waves of emotion and feeling that she communicates with. So just so people know that it might just be incredible feelings that you exchange.
Well, thank you for those insights, and thank you, Tim. I look forward to seeing you flourish and, you know, in all your glory in the next coming months as the seasons change. And thank you so much for John Paul sharing your connection. Again, so much wisdom. Thank you. And there Tim is all his glory. How wonderful.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Gorgeous.